Greetings everyone, and welcome to another Batman 80th Anniversary Review. Today we'll be talking about the Filmation animated series from 1977, The New Adventures of Batman, starring the voices of Adam West and Burt Ward. Yeah, today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Now this is kind of interesting because around the same time, Hanna-Barbera was doing the Super Friends. Yeah, the Super Friends had actually had a couple of seasons by this point, and this show appeared between two of the seasons of the Super Friends. The New Adventures of Batman aired from February 12th to May 28th of 1977. The all-new Super Friends Hour, which was the second season of Super Friends incidentally, premiered on September 10th of 1977. So, within the same year, we had two different shows from two different animation companies featuring some of the same characters. So that's something you would not see today, where a company like DC licenses out its characters to two separate animation companies, so you have two different shows featuring some of the same characters. Now that said, there were certain characters that were exclusive to the Super Friends that they couldn't use in the Batman series, but for the most part they had access to almost the full rogues gallery of all the the big Batman villains. It was also interesting to note in that it was the first time that Adam West and Burt Ward had done a Batman show of any kind since the 60s series. So it was kind of a big deal for Bat fans to have the original dynamic duo coming back in character as the characters that made them famous, albeit in animated form. This time around, however, they are not alone. No. It's interesting to note the difference in eras between the 1968 series and the 1977 series. Because by the time the 1977 series had rolled around, the whole idea of the comic relief sidekick had since become a mainstay of Saturday morning cartoons. Even the action-adventure ones like this. So you'd have your action-adventure heroes, but there'd always be that annoying comic relief sidekick that they just had to deal with all the time. Well, this one was no exception. So we got Batman and Robin joined by Bat-Mite. Bat-Mite being a creature from another dimension that was essentially a fan of Batman, so he dressed up like Batman and really wanted to help Batman and Robin. He could teleport and had various sort of magical abilities. He could float in the air, which is kind of funny because there's so many scenes in the show where Bat-Mite is in peril of falling or something, and Skinslip and I were watching this, and we're just like, you're in no danger. You can just teleport away. Like, you're only putting yourself in danger, so they have to save you because you're just a little whore for attention, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, that's right, Bat-Mite. You go and sit in the corner and you think about all the things you've done. So just before we get into the show proper, we'll do a little mini closer look here. So here's the front cover. Quite a nice action shot of our dynamic duo. And notice no Bat-Mite to be seen. And here's the back cover. And I should mention, we also have an insert with this. So here's the front of the insert that gives you all of the episodes that are on disc 1. Notice the first episode is entitled The Pest. Gee, who could that be referring to? And then the other side gives you the contents of disc 2. You can see even the penguin doesn't like Bat-Mite. And then much like the first set, we actually have 2 discs, some artwork on there, and there you go. So this one is 16 episodes. I should mention, actually, the first series, this one is actually 17 episodes. I think I mistakenly said 16. But, yeah, for whatever reason, that one's 17 episodes. This one is 16. So, there you go. Now, our roster of characters. We've got quite an impressive list of characters this time. We, of course, have Batman and Robin, looking much as they did in the 68 series. Visually, this is very similar to the 68 series. In fact, I think they even went so far as to reuse some of the animation cells, in particular for Batman and Robin. But they did quite a lot of new animation as well. Some of the Rogues Gallery have new designs that are different from the 68 series, as we'll see. Batgirl is back again, and this time I'm happy to say she's actually very helpful and is a valuable asset to the team. I think because Bat-Mite kind of took over as the useless character and was the one often getting in trouble that they had to get him out of and such, so that left Batgirl free to actually do Batgirl things and be helpful. And speaking of Batgirl and Bat-Mite, one of the things that keeps cropping up episode after episode is Bat-Mite is hopelessly in love with Batgirl, and he makes no secret of this throughout the series, doing his little thing with the hearts. And even though he could just teleport to wherever they're going, if Batgirl's going there, he insists on riding on the Batcycle with her, clinging tenaciously to her buttocks. Yeah, he's kind of shameless, as you can see, setting a good example for the kids. So we spend a little bit more time in the Batcave in this one. And one thing I thought was kind of interesting in the Batcave is, look at the screen for the Bat computer. I mean, at first glance, you think, oh, cool, it's a big Bat logo. Yeah, but it's such a non-standard shape. I mean, look at poor Commissioner Gordon having to scrunch down just to be visible on the screen, you know, like, who thought this screen design was a good idea? I mean, look at how much wasted screen space there is there that could have been used for, I don't know, screen? And speaking of Commissioner Gordon, you'll notice he looks more like the traditional mustachioed Commissioner Gordon that we, of course, know from the comic books. But the rest of the Batcave is pretty cool. As you can see, they've got designated areas for all of the various Bat vehicles. And speaking of which, we have a slightly revamped Bat signal in this one. The Batmobile appears to be pretty much the same design as the 68 series. In fact, again, I think they even reused some of the same cells as they used in the 68 series. Although I noticed when they show them driving, it's more clearly them sitting in the car, whereas in the 68 series it seemed to be them just sitting in front of a moving background and one of them would be holding the steering wheel. There was no actual car around them, you know. So we have lots of beauty shots of the Bat boat in action. Lots of different angles there and some exciting shots of cutting through the waves and whatnot. Looks pretty awesome. The Bat boat also doubles as a Bat sub, as you can see here. The Batcopter is back, and once again, we seem to have some new animation for it this time as well. We get some slightly more dynamic action shots of it, which is pretty cool. We also have the Bat plane, of course, which again has some additional action shots animated for it, which is quite good. This time, both Batman and Robin have Bat gyros, as you can see here. And there's this one episode where Batman and Robin produce what I can only describe as rocket dinghies out of their boots. Yeah. They're just rocketing along surfboard style on these dinghies. I think they were chasing after Mr. Freeze. And now for the Rogues Gallery. Well, first up, Catwoman is, of course, back. And she's had a bit of a costume redesign this time. She's got kind of almost a lioness motif to her outfit this time. And instead of being helped by the blue-clad cat men, she's helped by green-clad cat women. Catwoman also seems to have been doing quite well for herself since we last saw her, because she's acquired some new vehicles. She's got this cool cat motifed submarine, and a flying lion plane, which, you know, predates Voltron by about 7 years. Joker is back, looking much the same as he did in the 68 series, still modeled after the Silver and Bronze Age Joker, except this time he's joined by a laughing hyena named Giggles. Yes, Giggles the hyena. And yes, he laughs constantly. He doesn't appear to have his jester henchman anymore, but he does still have the Joker-mobile, which we see on at least one occasion. Mr. Freeze is back, still just as boring as he ever was, and now with a racial stereotype Russian henchman, no less. However, one thing I gotta say, Mr. Freeze has the most awesome villain car out of all of them in the entire series. I mean, look at this thing. Look at this. Like, super sleek and futuristic. I want a Hot Wheels car of that. Come on, man. Where's our Freeze-mobile toy? Oh, and he has a snowmobile as well. As a matter of fact, I think that was the same episode with the rocket dinghies that Batman and Robin were chasing him with. Penguin is back, looking much the same as he did in the 68 series. He's not quite as into the rocket umbrellas as he was, although he does have some that kind of function as helicopters. He does have this cool base that looks like a giant bird cage. It's pretty neat. And he has the Penguin Mobile. Again, where's our Hot Wheels toy of this? I mean, this has "Make a Toy of Me" written all over it, you know? His henchmen in this one aren't quite as interesting as the 68 series, where they were dressed up in bird suits, but a little more practical, I think. Although, for whatever reason, they all seem to have a penchant for wearing hats. All the girls wear these purple bowler hats, and all the guys wear these, like, vaudeville hats. I don't know what the reasoning is there, that's just how they all dress. There were a few villain team-ups in this one, although not really until the tail end of the series. For the most part, throughout the series, they just kind of worked solo and did their own thing. They didn't really get together much. I think there was one team-up about midway through the series, and then the last one was more towards the end for the big finale. We also had Clayface, and yes, this is the same Clayface that was in the Batman animated series. It's Matt Hagen, the actor. Which is interesting because apparently he hadn't been in the comics for very long at that point, so he was still a fairly newish character. But at least this version of Clayface.
Matt Hagen, the second Clayface, first appeared in Detective Comics number 298 in December of 1961.
This being, Saturday morning Batman, he would take on a lot of ridiculous shapes, either giant animals or giant objects to attack Batman and Robin with, and what have you. And then we have all the villains that were created solely for this series and never appeared anywhere else. Speaking of Clayface, we have Chameleon. Chameleon is this skinny guy who can change shape and turn into anything he wants. Like, why does this character even exist? They have Clayface. This is literally Clayface, just without the clay. What is the point of you, Chameleon? And then we have Electron, which actually, he looks kind of cool. I'm kind of surprised we didn't see more of this guy. He's got his little spaceship that he rides around in. He has his green-faced henchman. I don't honestly remember much of what happened in this episode. I think it was one of the ones where our attention drifted a little bit.
He shrinks Batman and Robin. You might as well call it Honey, I Shrunk Batman and Robin. Except it's Electron shrunk Batman and Robin.
So yeah, his one and only appearance was right here in that one single episode. And then we had the Moon Man. Yeah, where he hated the moon or something, and he wanted to pull the moon down to Earth. And this was interesting because when Skinslip and I watched this, we were commenting like, why is this level of villain in a Batman series? I mean, this looks like the kind of villain that Superman would go up against. He's just so ridiculously powerful and so far above the kinds of villains that Batman and Robin normally go up against. It was just kind of puzzling to us. The other thing that was puzzling to us was this character, where he's clearly meant to be a man of color, but he seems to be kind of lacking the color, if you know what I mean. Like, very strange. Not really sure what's up with that. Then we had this guy, Professor Bubbles, who quite frankly I'm glad we never ever saw again after this. The vocal performance for this was, he constantly talked like this, as if he was underwater and blowing bubbles. But he wasn't. He was in an underwater base, but he was clearly in an oxygenated area with air and not full of water, so I don't know why he talked like this all the time. It was just really freaking annoying. So yeah, was glad to see Professor Bubbles come and go very quickly. Then we have Sweet Tooth, the fat-shaming villain. He's literally this fat guy with fat henchmen that are missing teeth that just eat sweets all the time. I think it was meant to be sort of an evolution of the Simon the Pie Man character from the 68 series, or just a fresh take on that idea. I don't know. Honestly, between the two, I'll take Simon the Pie Man over Sweet Tooth. This guy didn't really do much for me.
So you may be wondering about the Riddler. Well, the opening titles showed this little montage of all the various villains from the series, and every villain that appears in this montage appeared in the series, except for the Riddler. As you can see, the Riddler was going to sport this really cool pink outfit. Like, darn it, I want my pink Riddler! But apparently the reason was the Riddler character was part of DC's deal with Hanna-Barbera for the Super Friends. So Riddler could appear in the Super Friends, but at this point in time, Filmation was not able to use him for the 1977 Batman series. So all we ever saw of the Riddler was his appearance every week in his pink outfit in the opening titles.
Now, I was all excited when I saw that the 13th and 14th episodes were this big, epic team-up. In fact, I think it's just called The Villains Team-Up. No, it's called Have an Evil Day. I got that completely wrong. Anyway, Have an Evil Day, 2-part story, and I'm like, oh, great, finally we're going to get like a big villain team-up to end off the season. It's going to be really spectacular, and well, yes, most of the Rogues Gallery is in it, and they team up, but the main villain is Zarbor. Zarbor, as you might guess, is another denizen of the planet and dimension that Bat-Mite comes from. So yeah, the big villain for the big 2-parter villain team-up episode is essentially an evil mustachioed Bat-Mite. And he's just as annoying as you're probably thinking he is. So I was quite happy when Zarbor was captured at the end of that 2-part story, and I thought, oh good, this will be like the other one-off villains. We will never see Zarbor again. Although I was a little concerned when I saw that the title of the final episode of the series is This Looks Like a Job for Bat-Mite. So yeah, we had our 2-part story. At the start of This Looks Like a Job for Bat-Mite, Zarbor gets out of prison. So it's Zarbor again. So we get an epic 3-part story all about Zarbor. Oh, and it doesn't stop there. They actually go to Bat-Mite's home planet. So we get a whole freaking planet of Bat-Mite people. And, oh, God. It was enough to put up with him over the course of the series. But then to have an epic 3-part story centered entirely around Bat-Mite and his people was just agony. Ugh. Because I think back to the 1968 series, and it was without Bat-Mite, and you know what? That made it so much more enjoyable, because it was just Batman and Robin versus the villain of the week, or villains teaming up of the week, or whatever, and it was a lot of fun. It felt like the comics, you know, like Silver Age comics brought to life. It was good fun, loved it. But Bat-Mite really lowered the bar of quality for this series. Even though the animation is improved over the 68 series, I mean, this is 9 years later. Filmation was very much at the top of their game by this point. It had it pretty much down to a science, you know, reusing cells but getting like some cool sequences in the can that they can slot in. Maybe, you know, Batman swooping around the city, lots of beauty shots of the vehicles flying around or driving around or what have you. But God, this whole trend of having the annoying sidekick comic relief character that just seemed to be required by law for all Saturday morning cartoons by that point. Yeah. So, of course, the real treat of this series is hearing the voices of Adam West and Burt Ward as the main characters, and that's really the one major saving grace. And I should also mention, I think a large chunk of their voice actor budget went to hiring them, because there's only like 3 other actors in the entire thing. There's Lenny Weinrib, who was, of course, a very seasoned voice actor. Some of you might remember him from Voltron. He was the voice of Hunk and Prince Lotor. Yeah, so anyway, he was, well, pretty much the entire Rogues Gallery in this. And then there was Lou Scheimer, who did the voice of Bat-Mite and also the voice of Clayface. And then there was another actress who did the female characters, like all the female characters. Well, actually, Lou Scheimer's daughter came in and did some of the supporting characters as well. I remember she was one of the henchmen of the Penguin as well. But then there was this other actress who did basically Batgirl and Catwoman and most of the other female characters as well. So it was a really small voice cast compared to the number of people that were in the 68 series. And as much of a treat as it was to hear Adam West and Burt Ward, I gotta say, I think the quality of the series suffered for the fact that it was the same actor doing darn near everybody in the Rogues Gallery, and the fact that Bat-Mite was just a constant presence in the series. It was, in my opinion, a bit of a step down in quality from the older series. And speaking of the older series, one of the things we looked at last time was some of the various animation errors that made their way into the show. Well, the old reverse bat logo makes a return appearance here. Some different shots, though, as you can see. Got this one. And this one. And then, of course, there's the old bat logo. What bat logo? Yeah, I don't know why two of those three shots are involving the bat boat. Like, is there a radiation leak in the bat boat or something that just messes with the logo? I don't know. Anyway, if you're a Batman completist and really want this one for your collection, I wouldn't say it's a total write-off. I mean, there are some good aspects to this. There's a few fun stories. It's certainly good to hear Adam West and Burt Ward back as the dynamic duo again. But, I mean, know what you're getting into. I mean, it's very much a typical Saturday morning cartoon in that you have the sidekick character, you have the goofy humor, and stuff like that. But in amongst all of that, it is kind of cool to see a lot of these classic Batman elements being brought to animated life, especially since there wasn't really any other Batman stuff on TV at the time other than his appearances in the Super Friends. But, I mean, he's sharing screen time with the entire Justice League, so you don't get a ton of Batman action in that. So, as always, if you'd like to add this to your collection, you'll find an Amazon link in the description down below. Thank you very much for your support. And I think that's it for today. So thank you very much for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon sponsors. Be sure to join me on Twitch. I stream almost every day doing stuff like this, and games, and Geek Chat, and we have a good time over there. Alrighty, so see you next time. Until then, sayonara.